ladies and emperors, I just got back from Venice, and boy, are my arms tired.
There is something extraordinary about a man who has lived long enough to stop caring what anyone thinks. Mel Brooks, the comic genius behind some of Hollywood's most beloved films, recently turned 98 years old. And at 98, he has earned the right to say whatever he wants. No publicist is going to stop him. No studio executive can threaten him. No reputation management team is going to polish his words into something softer and safer. Mel Brooks is going to tell you exactly how he feels, and if you don't like it, that's your problem. So when Mel sat down and began talking about the actors he genuinely struggled to work with throughout his legendary career, the entertainment world leaned in close. 6 names came up. 6 people who tested his patience, challenged his authority, ignored his directions, or simply drove him to the edge of his sanity on one set or another. And what makes this list so fascinating is not the anger behind it, because the anger is barely there. What makes it compelling is the deep, complicated, often hilarious love that sits underneath every complaint. Mel Brooks built his career on chaos. He loved the unexpected. He thrived when things went sideways. So perhaps it should come as no surprise that the people who frustrated him the most were also the people who helped him create comedy history. These are the 6 actors Mel Brooks says he hated working with, and why every single one of them was absolutely worth it. If you have ever tried to have a serious conversation with someone who keeps breaking into uncontrollable laughter, you have a small taste of what Mel Brooks experienced every single time he directed Dom DeLuise. The 2 men worked together across multiple films: Silent Movie, History of the World Part 1, Spaceballs, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and in every single production, the story was exactly the same. Dom DeLuise could not keep a straight face to save his life. Now, laughter on a comedy set sounds like it should be a perfectly reasonable thing. You are making a funny movie. People laugh. What is the problem? The problem, as Mel will tell you with exasperated affection, is that Dom was not laughing at punchlines. He was not laughing at the end of a clever scene. Dom was laughing at everything, at nothing, at a raised eyebrow from across the room, at the way somebody walked past him holding a clipboard. The man was a laughter machine with no off switch, and that created absolute mayhem every time the camera started rolling. Directors depend on momentum. You build a scene, you set the energy, you call action, and you capture something real before it disappears. Dom DeLuise had a unique talent for destroying that momentum at the precise moment it mattered most. Mel would set up a shot, run through the scene, feel the energy building towards something special, call action, and Dom would already be chuckling before the first line was spoken. Not because anything funny had happened. Simply because Dom existed in a permanent state of barely contained delight at the absurdity of being alive and working on a movie set. Mel has described scenes that required double-digit takes simply because Dom could not pull himself together. Cast members learned quickly that making eye contact with Dom during filming was a catastrophic mistake. Actors like Madeline Kahn and Harvey Korman, who were funny people in their own right, could send Dom into complete meltdown with a single glance. There were days when a scene with one simple line took nearly an hour to shoot, not because of technical problems or forgotten dialogue, but because Dom DeLuise found something hilarious in the moment and could not recover. And yet, and this is the thing that made Mel's frustration so complicated, when Dom finally delivered a clean take, it was extraordinary. His timing was impeccable. His energy was infectious in the best possible way. He brought a warmth and a joy to his performances that could not be manufactured or directed into existence. You could not teach an actor to have what Dom DeLuise had naturally. That undeniable, overwhelming, slightly exhausting joy was exactly what made him special, and Mel knew it even as he was pulling his hair out on set. Off camera, Dom was one of the most generous, warm-hearted people in the business. He cooked for the crew. He treated everyone like family. He filled every room he walked into with genuine happiness. Mel loved him deeply as a human being. He also found him professionally maddening in ways that are difficult to fully articulate. Their friendship survived every blown take and every delayed shoot. And when Mel talks about Dom today, he cannot get through the complaints without smiling. That tells you everything you need to know. Mel Brooks has called Madeline Kahn one of the most gifted comedic performers he ever encountered. Her work in Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, and History of the World Part 1 represents some of the finest comic acting in American cinema. She had timing that felt almost supernatural, an ability to inhabit a character completely while simultaneously letting the audience see the brilliant mind behind the performance. She was, by any reasonable measure, a genuine treasure. She was also, by Mel Brooks' account, an absolute handful. Madeline Kahn did not show up to set, read her lines, and do what the director asked. That was not her process, and it was never going to be her process. She arrived with her own fully formed ideas about her character, her scenes, her dialogue, and frankly about how the whole production should probably be running. She questioned scripts line by line. She pushed back on costume choices. She occasionally arrived late while the entire crew stood around waiting, and when she finally walked in she would do so with the calm, unruffled energy of someone who had simply been somewhere more important. What made this particularly challenging for Mel was that Madeline was rarely, if ever, wrong. She would argue for a different line reading, fight for a different approach to a scene, insist on changes that seemed unnecessary in the moment, and then deliver something so precisely right that Mel was left with no choice but to acknowledge she had improved upon his original idea. This is a particular kind of frustrating that goes beyond normal frustration, because there is nowhere to put your irritation when the person causing it keeps producing results that are genuinely better than what you had planned. Her role as Lily von Stupp in Blazing Saddles became one of the most memorable performances in comedy history. The exhausted, dramatically world-weary quality she brought to that character was entirely her own invention, something she had developed through her meticulous, sometimes maddening process of taking a script apart and putting it back together her way. The scenes were difficult to shoot. They took longer than they should have. She wanted them done a specific way and was not shy about communicating that. But audiences have been quoting those scenes for 50 years, which suggests she might have known what she was doing. Mel's complicated relationship with Madeline Kahn was built on mutual respect that was occasionally buried under layers of mutual exasperation. She pushed him. He pushed back. The films were better for it. And when Mel talks about her now, you can hear both the frustration of the director who could never quite control her and the deep admiration of the artist who recognized her extraordinary gifts. Gene Hackman appeared in exactly one Mel Brooks production, a brief but legendary role as the blind hermit in Young Frankenstein. The scene is one of the funniest in the entire film, a masterpiece of physical comedy and awkward warmth that audiences have loved for decades. It is also, according to Mel Brooks, one of the more challenging sequences he ever had to direct, and the challenge came entirely from the collision of two completely incompatible working philosophies. Gene Hackman was, at the time, one of the most respected dramatic actors in Hollywood. He had an Oscar. He had a reputation for intense preparation and total commitment to his craft. He took every role seriously, regardless of how small it was, regardless of how silly the material around it might be. And when he arrived on the set of Young Frankenstein, a black-and-white parody film featuring a monster with an enormous neck bolt, he brought that same intense, focused, serious energy with him. This put him almost immediately at odds with Mel Brooks, whose entire directorial philosophy was built around looseness, spontaneity, and the beautiful unpredictability of actors who are genuinely surprised by what happens around them. Mel liked sets that were alive, chaotic, full of unexpected energy. He encouraged his actors to try things differently from take to take, to respond to each other genuinely, to let the comedy breathe and grow organically. Hackman found this approach deeply uncomfortable. He wanted a plan. He wanted to know what the scene was going to do before he did it. When other actors on set dissolved into laughter between takes, which happened regularly, because this was a Mel Brooks production and that was simply how things worked, Hackman remained focused and composed, occasionally shooting looks at his colleagues that communicated his views on professional conduct without requiring any words. He was not unkind. He was not rude. He simply had no patience for what he perceived as a lack of seriousness, even in a comedy, even in a scene involving soup being poured on his head. The remarkable thing is that the scene works. It is hilarious and tender and brilliantly performed. Hackman's absolute commitment to the reality of the moment, his refusal to wink at the audience, his genuine sincerity in the middle of utter absurdity, all of that contributed enormously to why the scene is so funny. Sometimes great comedy comes from the actor who refuses to be funny. Mel understood that, even while finding the experience deeply uncomfortable. After Young Frankenstein, they never worked together again. Both of them probably understood why. Cloris Leachman is one of the most decorated performers in the history of American entertainment. Her range is staggering, her commitment to her craft absolute, and her willingness to do whatever a role demands completely fearless. She is also, according to Mel Brooks, someone who approaches every single scene as though it is a philosophical inquiry that requires thorough examination before anyone can think about pointing a camera at it. They worked together on Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, and History of the World Part 1. In every production, Cloris delivered extraordinary work. She also asked an extraordinary number of questions. Not logistical questions about blocking or timing, those would have been manageable. Cloris asked the deeper questions. Why does the character feel this way? What happened to her before the scene began? What does this moment mean in the context of the character's entire emotional history? What would this person actually do, really do, if they were a real human being in this situation? These are excellent questions. They are the questions that serious actors ask when they are committed to bringing genuine truth to a performance. They are also the questions that, when asked repeatedly about every line in every scene before the crew has managed to get a single usable take, can make a director feel like he is running a graduate seminar rather than a movie set. Mel's approach to filmmaking was instinctive and fast-moving. He trusted his gut. He made decisions quickly and expected his cast to keep up with him. Cloris could not operate that way. She needed to understand everything first. She needed to be fully inside the character before she could portray the character, and getting fully inside the character required a level of exploration and interrogation that simply did not fit Mel's preferred shooting schedule. Her performance as Frau Blucher in Young Frankenstein became iconic, the severe, mysterious housekeeper whose name causes horses to whinny in alarm. The character is a perfect piece of comic creation, and Cloris inhabited her completely. But Mel has said that the two of them clashed repeatedly over the tone and nature of the character. Cloris wanted to find deeper, darker layers. Mel wanted something stranger and funnier. Both of them were right in different ways, and the tension between those visions is probably part of what makes the performance so compellingly odd. Mel deeply respected Cloris Leachman. He respected her intelligence, her commitment, her absolute refusal to take shortcuts. He also admitted that after a full day of filming with her, he was exhausted in a way that a lesser performance would never have caused. She demanded the best